Alright, hey there guys, it's Burt from SoftTubes, and I'm starting this beginning of a series on films and stuff, just little discussions, reviews. I might do some reactions to like trailers and stuff. Just expanding our content basically. So today I'm going to be talking about the new film Alita Battle Angel that released like 2 weeks ago. More specifically, I'm going to talk about why it's bombing at the box office, or why I think, looking at things, why that might be. I'm not an expert. I did do some like film schooling and stuff like that, but I'm not an expert by any means. This is just from what I can see and my experience of what might be happening, and going forward that'll be basically it. If I talk about something, it's coming from my personal stuff with all the bias and personal stuff that goes along with that. I will totally admit that I have a bias in certain things. So with that in mind, why don't we have a look at what's going on here. Alita is based off a manga called Gunmu, which I'm pretty sure I will pronounce wrong, meaning pretty literally gun dream in Japanese. And it was adapted into a 2-part OVA in '93. It's basically a cyberpunk story set around an amnesiac cyborg discovered by a cybermedic expert, set in the remains of an Earth following a devastating war. The story sets up a strict class system in this new world, with those living in the city known as Scrapyard either living off the scraps dropped down from the floating city above, or working to build things for those who live above them. James Cameron, who's best known for films such as Titanic, Avatar, and The Terminator, has wanted to make the film for about 10 years now, having the property brought to his attention by fellow filmmaker Guillermo del Toro, who people will know from Pan's Labyrinth and Hellboy. He wanted to wait until special effects were up to his standard for the film before he would go ahead. And then projects such as Avatar got in the way, forcing him to hand over directing to Robert Rodriguez in order to get it made. So we have a passion project of a man who is known for making very successful blockbuster films to both critical and general praise, a director who knows the kind of action a property like this would require, and a property itself that seemingly follows in the footsteps of a lot of the superhero blockbusters we've had in recent years that have all seen great success, or for the most part. Yet, it opened to a really lackluster opening weekend. So, basically, what went wrong? Well, let's break down a few of the ideas here. Did anyone actually know what kind of movie this was? I mean, Cameron was fascinated by the film, discussing what it means to be human, to have a philosophical debate with the audience through the film, and it shows in the first trailer.
This is just a body. It's not bad or good. That part's up to you.
The song choice, Lullaby for a Soldier by Maggie Siff, and the deliberate usage of little action shots show this. Problem is, philosophy doesn't sell blockbusters, and so, along with the increasing the size of Alita's pupils, the following 2 trailers increased the amount of action shots, and by the third, gave it a musical score suggesting a darker, more dramatic, and action-focused film.
I do not stand by in the presence of evil.
But by this time, did anyone really care? Anyone who doesn't know the source material, but was paying attention, was likely thrown by the shifts in tone between the trailers, and left unsure what the film really was in the end. Anyone who was into the philosophy Cameron was interested in were likely sold on the first trailer, while those looking for some popcorn action likely found the trailer still focusing too much on ideas they didn't care about and characters they didn't know. And those things don't lead to an audience spending money for the most part. But let's talk about the audience. I mean, this leads us into a pretty major factor. Who is the audience of this film? If action fans are put off by the push on philosophy and character moments, and those looking for a deep thinking film see it as nothing more than blockbuster schlock, then who's left? The obvious answer is anime fans, particularly Gunmu fans. I'm really sorry if I am pronouncing that wrong. Problem is, as much as they may hate to hear it, anime fans are not numerous enough to have films specifically made for them. Not with any major budget anyway. This is why comic book films change so much to appeal to a broader audience. Comic book fans just aren't enough by themselves. This issue is made worse by the fact many people who may be anime fans were cautious of the film, and rightfully so, as they have been burned so many times before by Hollywood adaptations. Hell, while we're on it, let's talk about Ghost in the Shell, which released in 2017. Ignoring all the controversy around that film, it didn't exactly do well, barely making any more than its estimated budget, and certainly not making back its requirement to break even. And it made it a total flop. I'm sure people will offer various reasons for why it failed, but truthfully, most have one link. People just didn't care. Middle America didn't care about whether machines can have souls then, and they still don't now. Now, this isn't to say Alita and Ghost in the Shell are great comparisons. They're not. Purely on audience, Alita is reviewing far better, and it's even doing better on critics, even if the gap is smaller. We all know quality doesn't necessarily translate to sales or interest, though. Ignoring everything else, in essence, they are very similar films, and a lot of their marketing shared a lot of similarities. Both are stories about female cyborgs with amnesia about their past, stories about what it means to be human, stories about fighting evil controlling organizations. I mean, the similarities go on and on. I mean, they're even both based on manga properties. There's enough similarities that for most people, they may as well be the same film. And if they didn't see one, they probably won't see the other. Well, let's move on to what I think is the biggest problem. It's February. Now, you may think this seems stupid to point out, but in terms of film releases, it's pretty major. Traditionally, February has always been a slow month for cinema goers, and so is a month often used to dump films that don't require as many sales to make a profit. Of course, every so often a Black Panther or a Deadpool will come along, but they're the exception rather than the rule. On top of that, the only films that do tend to do well are of a more romantic variety, capitalizing on Valentine's Day. Now, Alita does indeed have a romantic element, as hollow as it may feel at times, but it was never really sold as such. Any romance was treated as the typical romance at an action blockbuster. There, but relegated to the side. Compared to the other more romantic options available, it was a tough sell, even if it did end up keeping the top that weekend as well. But on top of the usual slowness this year, there's an extra reason to avoid the cinema. Now, here in Australia, it's been pretty toasty, as you may expect for summer. But anyone in the US could tell you that it's been a bit cold of late, and in some parts downright dangerous due to ice and snow. If you're already not 100% sure you're going to see a film, you probably won't risk icy roads to go see it. And Alita isn't the only film suffering. Lego Movie 2 has also seen a rather terrible start, with its opening weekend about half of what the first film did, despite the fact that the first Lego Movie was incredibly popular and Lego itself is still a very well known and loved brand with most people, compared to Alita, which is well loved but by a select niche group. So can we actually say why the movie failed, or is failing? Well, not really. See, the problem is there's a lot of factors that go into these kind of things, and it's hard to say whether it's one single factor or it's everything kind of culminating, which is, in my opinion, the most likely option. It's a lot of little things all culminating in bad numbers. And they're certainly not, like, it's making money. It's no doubt about it, it's making money, but it's not the money that Fox and Cameron wanted to make. I believe it's up to 90 million total box office as of now, which is about 2 weeks after release, which sounds decent to you or me, but the fact is that by all estimates, it needs to make about 500 million in order to break even, and that's not a good number, and the problem is it's not getting a foothold overseas. So it may never get to the numbers it needs to make, and personally, that kind of upsets me. I saw it and I enjoyed it, and so I have a bias, but I actually thought it was a clever enough movie. It may not be the most original thing you're ever gonna see, but if you're, like, for people who will go see action movies that don't talk about anything, and in fact, like, it still infuriates me that things like Venom do so well, yet this is falling to the wayside. This has a more coherent plot and actual conversation compared to Venom, and you can like Venom, but it's just that disconnect between watching one thing and then watching another thing, when in a lot of ways they're also the same movie. They have the same kind of conversation about being human and in control of our actions and all those sort of things. So I'd like it if people would at least go out and give this movie a shot, but then, like I said before, there's certain reasons people don't. So we'll just have to wait and see. It's the only blockbuster essentially until Captain Marvel has, so maybe it can find its audience by then, and I hope it kind of does. Anyway, I was Burt, and I'll see you next time when I break down another movie thing, I guess. Alright, see you guys. Like, share, and subscribe. What'd they do to Terry Crews? This isn't Terry Crews. Look how small he is. He's a freaking... Terry Crews is a baby! Look at him, it's a baby Terry Crews! Oh, gun. Can I get the gun? How do I get the gun? Okay, hold left bumper. That was not what I expected. Well...